So then we are back with the modern understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzaielic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yirmiyahu the prophet that was rejected by the nation of Israel because they did not understand the recordings of the prophet. Yet he was destroyed, he was sawn in half, and then whatsoever he said regarding the holy instructions came through, and there are areas yet waiting for completion. One of them, as we understand, is the autumn feast. So then, since the autumn feast is not yet completed, the second half of the instruction, second half of the prophets, we find ourselves then after 09, precisely during the time of the restoration period, where then in Yirmiyahu the 61st chapter you'll find a layer of understanding related with the spring feast already completed. That's what you have, for instance, known as New Testament. There is no New Testament. There is the completion of the spring feast from Leviticus the 23rd chapter. Then there is a transitional time from the first tabernacle service to the second tabernacle services, where you find the understanding in Galah or Revelation, then the first menorah. There is the service of the first menorah, first tabernacle service, and the second menorah, the second tabernacle services. So then, during this time where then restoration period of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries, those cities are returning. Then as a bonus, the Creator very wisely included the Gentiles, because he knew at the end of the time of the seat, where then the nations would do whatever they wanted, they would end up busted. That's why our economies is very bad. A set of our economies is very bad because we have to think as a whole. The plan is one plan. There is only a plan only. So when nations they come together regarding the time of the restoration, there is only a plan. And the plan, singular plan, is this. 11th chapter of Daniel explains then the kingdom of the north responsible for security. The kingdom of the east is the factory. Kingdom of the south has tabernacling and raw materials. So then, obviously the other nations then they retrieve and rebuild. That's the whole objective. So then, it is a singular plan. However, coming out of the time of the 1,000 years of deceit brings with it reminiscences of then desires of then nations to do their own thing. That's where then they get in trouble. During the time of deceit, they could do whatever they wanted. During the time of the restoration, there is a preset plan. So then, countries, understandably, when they are overextending themselves, then they should retrieve and rebuild. Other countries, for some crazy reasons, such as the United States, for instance, rather than retrieving and rebuilding, then they want to expand and spend more. It's not going to work, obviously. Coming a time then where then United States must remind itself of its position and then retrieve and rebuild. Thus far, we find the government expanding itself more and more and more, and then they are obviously on a way of China of doing their work. The Creator is with China. It's no longer with the United States. We do have a notion of Savior, but it's absolutely screwed up. We were not taught properly of the holy instructions. And the reason why we should retrieve and rebuild is precisely for the purposes of learning the holy plans of the Creator. As long as this country is expanding itself, they won't learn. The only way of learning is by retrieving and rebuilding. Then the testifiers of the Messiah can do their work, teaching the holy instructions as they are from the original manuscripts, as per the time of the prophet and the time of Shaliach Shaul. Shayak Shaul was very precise when he said, 2 Corinthians 11:4, if any person comes to you and proclaims you another Messiah, a Messiah not from tabernacling, then you have the false Messiah. That's why our country is screwed up. Because this country have believed a false Messiah. That's why it doesn't work. So then, as then this nation retrieves and rebuilds, then the testifiers of the Messiah, they have their objective. Teaching the people properly, as per the original manuscripts. No takanot, no masim. Teaching them precisely as then Shaliach Shaul taught his people, but not on the level of functioning. Simply on the level of testifying. There is a distinction. So then, when we read Galah, then we understand the time of the restoration period, because we find sections where then we understand as revelation truly is not. The revealing section of the holy instructions is related with the sounding of the shofars and subsequently then the pouring of the cups. Those are related with Galah, related with Autumn Feast. The rest of it does not belong there. You have sections belonging on Spring Feast, you have sections belonging then during the time of the restoration period, you have sections of it related with the post-Autumn Feast. So then, when this nation then begins its quest of retrieving and rebuilding, then they will understand the true Creator. Thus far, it's not working. Because the Creator is very normal. The Creator evaluates if a country is overextending itself, they should retrieve and rebuild. By overexpanding themselves and then expanding even further is not going to help them. The Creator is not coming down from heaven and giving favor to the United States anymore, because our time has expired. We were granted 200 years out of 1,000, roughly. England was granted 800 years. Thus, 1,000. There is no more time granted for Gentiles to do whatever they want. After 09, then we are during the time of the restoration period, and there is a plan, and the plan came from 2,500 years ago, roughly. And the plans then, they were obviously placed aside for a long time, and it's not going to change. So then the best course of action is understanding the important role of China. China must unite every country, every nation, making sure their system is worldwide. No exception, no nation, no computer must be left outside of the system of the dragon. So then when we read the 20th chapter of Galah, then we understand that is a section of it related with the dragon. The entire world must be linked with the dragon, as the entire world was linked with deceit for 1,000 years. And the plan of the deceit, it was so great that the nations, they have trouble get rid of their own junky ways and understand then the holy instructions. That's how global and how strong the description of Galah related with Nahashatan as a deceiver was then absolutely solidly implemented. But the problem is there is no more deceit. We are no longer during the time of deceit. We have remnants of these countries trying to do their own thing. Australia has not realized yet they should become then the South Pacific trading post. They are playing around with carbon tax and then schemes there and schemes over there and then another types of schemes. Going to Papua New Guinea and try to establish then some sort of a security, some sort of a shop construction of some sort. They are trying to do their own thing. It's not going to work. The only objective is facilitating then the line of the dragon. The dragon is trade, precise trade, transactions. Dragon Mart is the physical area of the dragon. requires in South Pacific, requires in South Atlantic, requires in North Atlantic, requires in India, South Africa, in many other places, as many as required by the dragon. Then the system becomes virtual. That's why the G20 is then obviously gathering in September. So then the dragon can be granted its precision. So then when you read Galah, the 20th chapter, you find a facet of then the seed solidly then done, because nations are having trouble understanding their positions because they were so deceived. Even though the truth is spoken, it doesn't get in them. The humdrum thinking they can do their own thing is in them. But we are no longer during the time of deceit. We are during the time of the dragon, precision. But they try to do what then the king of Babylon tried to do. The statue of gold. They can rely on their own strength and their own abilities for no use. If we read the whole instruction, there is not a hint of understanding related to the environment. But the greater understanding of the environment is then you should not throw garbage in the ocean. You should not eat those animals or creatures that do cleaning of the ocean. They are there because they eat junk, so then the chemical composition of the ocean remains then obviously clean. They shouldn't throw garbage in rivers. But as far as the environment, as the atmosphere, there is not a hint of it. Because this planet is going to last for roughly 20 years only. And there is nothing we can do to change it. 20 years, very maximum. So why then making a heck out of the life of those people, where then they want to search for jobs? And the job creation comes from the dragon. The dragon must receive the trade's credit of this moment. Simply related with logistics. Logistics type of jobs. Logistics type of manufacturing. Manufacturing of boxes, manufacturing of label, manufacturing of motors, and then belt system, mechanics of aircrafts, mechanics of trucks, mechanics of ships, of locomotives, and related with logistics. The Messiah already gave then, in quote, the recipe of prosperity. It's 100% related with the dragon. Can any kind of country shop is going then to fight against China? No. Even Europe already has the very proper understanding there is no way of making war against China, as far as manufacturing is concerned. It was done this way. It has to be in line with, not against it. As far as transitional time, we understand then during the time of Moshe there was a transitional time from paganism then to holy teachings. There was a transitional time. They had to be in the desert for 40 years until they had a hold of who the Creator was. From then on, they went to Promised Land and they trained for more than 1,000 years for the coming of the Messiah. Afterwards came the transition from the first and second tabernacle services, first and second menorahs. Then the Messiah reigned for 1,000 years. Then the Hashatan reigned for 1,000 years. Now we are back on the schedule of restoration. Then at the end comes the autumn feast, and then the age is closed. So then, let's understand, during the time of this restoration period related with the Gentiles, the dragon must have his way. There is no other way. Not because you have certain religion, because you believe this, that, and the other. Because then the dragon is optional. No, it's not optional. Read Galatia 20th chapter. You have a specific slot of time only for the dragon. This means worldwide dragon. What is the dragon? Is the trade of the end. The Messiah spoke of the ships, and then he spoke of them as then and the freighters of the earth during a period of time on apex, or then the golden time, where then the most of trade related with the stick of authority of the Ishmaelites combined. It is the utmost apex of the period of the trade of this end. But the Messiah is in the future yet. The dragon is establishing himself as yet geographical areas of the earth, such as then Dubai, Cancun, obviously Australia at some point, and then South Brazil at some point, and then Northern America at some point, and then India at some point, and South Africa. Then after this G20, you find then the BRICS, the system of the dragon, where then you understand the banking of the dragon, where then every banking system of the world must be linked up with him. Then later, every computer, every system, every financial transaction must be absolutely linked with the dragon. So then when you read Galatia 20th chapter and the dragon, then you understand the entire world linked with the dragon trade-wise. The Creator has provided jobs for the people, but must come through the dragon, the facet of Nahashatan, because sin is in this world. While sin is in the world in any fashion, in any way, the dragon must be recognized and must be through his ways. During the time of deceit, people had a choice. We are no longer during the time of deceit. But we can understand the grip and the strong, solid grip of deceit amongst the nations, because they are trying to do their own thing yet. They don't understand there is a shift and devil no longer exists. They have to understand, every time they think of devil, is deceit, mockery, does no longer exist. It is dragon. His facet has changed from deceit to precision. When you speak of precision, you have to understand a country that do maintain a budget. They understand their expenses. They understand the importance of numbers. They understand the importance of imports and exports. And most importantly, they understand the linking with the dragon and what the dragon demands. There is no way of going around. And because our pastor never taught us this way. Your pastor was deceived. He was born during the time of deceit. He taught you a Savior that no longer exists. Never existed. If you believed there was a Messiah from any other than tabernacling, you already believed the false Messiah. But let's say, for instance, you had then an initiation of who the Messiah was. Yet, he no longer exists because he was generated during the time of deceit. What is holy from heaven, creation, is tabernacling. Tabernacling is on the land of Cush. The prophet already spoken. What did he say? Galatia 1:8. And then woe to the land of Cicada beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Because then the prophet's explaining, woe to the land. Those people are going to be woed. It's a warning. And then in the land of Cush, you find then very precisely then the prophet explaining, and the times and the seasons. and the spring and autumn and harvest. He's explaining the times and the seasons of the holy instructions. This was very popular from the time of Yohanan, the first holy city, until 1009. Going around, measuring the land, measuring the perimeter, make sure to establish then the perimeter of the holy tabernacling, and then establishing their instructions amongst the people, so then they were functioning and directing the nations. Not control of the nations, directing the nations. So then during this time we are then restoring ourselves of what it means then the Mashiach. There isn't church. Church doesn't exist. Those were generated during the time of deceit. What did exist during the time of Yohanan and prior of, because of the transitional time, the people they were gathering around. But there was a mixture of Hebraic people familiar with the holy instructions versus then those people who were Gentiles. And sometimes they were having families amongst themselves, and then Shaliach Shaul had a problem. Ruach HaKodesh had sent him then, obviously, informed them that the spring feast was completed, and then the Messiah had sent Ruach HaKodesh as promised. And he was distributing amongst the Hebrews then the functions. 7 spirits of Elohim, 7 functions. But then there were Gentiles mixed up with them. And then Shaliach Shaul was thinking of himself, what to do with those people? They are not part of the Holy Covenant. However, they got mixed up with our own people. Then he came with some remarks, some guidelines for Gentiles' behavior, how they should behave themselves because they were mixed with Hebrews. They should behave in a certain way because then there is a holy presence of Ruach HaKodesh and they are functioning, preparing themselves for the first holy city. The rest of the world, they had no part in it. It wasn't the time. The relationship with other nations and then the Hebrews is via what the Messiah has sent them to do and observe. This means forming of the holy cities. When the first holy city was then completed per instructions, then became the relationship of Gentiles and tabernacling. But most of the world, they are reading from a transitional time, and the instructions, other than those people who were in a relationship with the Hebrews and having families, they have no part whatsoever during the transitional time. But they claim themselves of some sort of divine power where they make themselves. It's not an invitation. They make themselves of some sort of importance. If they were having some sort of a function on their own, some sort of a gift from the Spirit, and they don't have any, they are crazy. They are prophets in this country proclaiming themselves a prophet, but they are the scoundrels. They are liars and scoundrels. And Shaliach Shaul already said they are going to come up with the teachers of their own. With the itching ears, teaching the people what they don't understand. They are false, they are scoundrels. Thus then the false Messiah, a Messiah outside of tabernacling, is false. Any ramification from this false Messiah is always false. They are always scoundrels. Yes, sometimes they are nice people. But nice people speaking junk make themselves then scoundrels. There is no if, whats, and buts. The prophets, they explained how tabernacling should be. They explained the way the relationship of the Gentiles and tabernacling should be. And then there is a certain way where then Gentiles, after they are born again, should behave. And Gentiles, they only do testifying on behalf of the Messiah. So when you read then Galah, the 6th chapter, you find the testifiers, those people making testimony on behalf of the Messiah. Those are the Gentiles saved in the Messiah, outside of the holy cities. The holy people, the Hebrews, they have only an objective, and their objective is forming more holy cities as per instructions, never mixing up with the Gentiles again, never mixing up with the Gentiles again, and never mixing up with Gentiles again. They have a specific objective, and they must remain secluded and holy in the holy cities. And their objective is going to Jerusalem and do the pruning. They don't teach the Gentiles. They don't testify on behalf of the Messiah. They only function. When the holy cities are set up and they're doing their work, they go outside of the holy cities, they do what the Ruach HaKodesh wants them to do, and they return to the holy city. They don't teach the people. The teaching of the people is done by the testifiers, those Gentiles saved in the Messiah. Those, they do the teaching, and the teaching is simply galaying. They are not going to be teaching their own thing. They are going to galah them, to reveal the holy instructions, what the Messiah has taught, the enlightenment for the salvation of the Gentiles. The Hebrews, they don't do this. They only function. They have done their part. Their part was then training for more than 1,000 years for the coming of the Messiah. They formed the holy cities. Gentiles are saved. They remain outside of the holy cities, but linked in spirit with the holy cities, and they testify on behalf of the Messiah. Those are Gentiles saved in the Messiah. The Hebrews in the holy cities, they function with the 7 spirits of Elohim, 7 functions. And they go to Jerusalem to do the pruning until Jerusalem is saved. Then tabernacle is established on a mount when the time comes. Thus then when we read Zechariah, you understand, then on their route, when the Hebrews are walking on their route up to Jerusalem, then 10 Gentiles will try to get a hold of them. And say, teach us, because we know the Creator is with you. But they are not going to be teaching. Their objective is Jerusalem. They're going to teach their people. They're going to galah their people only. But they may say, we don't know, but they may say, go over there at the city and listen to the Gentiles saved in the Messiah, and they will testify for you. This is what you want to hear it. The Hebrews won't be teaching. They only function, and 7 spirits of Elohim, 7 functions, and they will to do the pruning of Jerusalem. That's their objective. So don't ask later for teachings from the Hebrews. They won't teach you. The teaching comes from the Gentiles. Gentiles saved in the Messiah. So then when you read Galah, the 6th chapter, then you understand, and those testify on behalf of the Messiah. Those are Gentiles saved. And the Gentiles saved, they are not from the holy cities. They are living outside of the holy cities, yet linked in spirit with the holy cities. Couldn't be any clearer. Has to be done per instructions, and the prophets were very clear. There is no making deals, those dirty deals. Because you know so much of it, why don't we make then a ministry of ourselves? We could make a lot of money with it. What has the Messiah said? You have received at no charge. Give at no charge. What the Messiah expects, galah the people, show them, and then make sure they understand who He is. That's the objective. You don't make a ministry of your own because you know so much of it. You do what the Messiah told you to do. And this means testifying only. You don't pray with people. You don't raise your hand and touch the head of the person. You don't use his name. You only galah them. Prayers should be done only by the true Hebrews, because they have to function along with it. It has to have a purpose. And the word of wisdom, and the word of knowledge, and miracles, and healings, and prophecy, and tongues, interpretation of tongues, and discerning of spirits. Gentiles, they can't do this. So when you watch these people from the church playing around and laying their dirty, scoundrelized hands on somebody else and praying what they don't understand, is absolutely demonic. The Messiah said, don't ever do beyond the instructions. But the Messiah said we should pray for each other. No. He said during the time when Ruach HaKodesh was given to his people and they were functioning, then those led by Ruach HaKodesh amongst the Hebrews only should pray for each other with a purpose based from those 7 functions. It must be the original people. Gentiles, they don't pray. How can they pray if they only understand half of the instructions? And they claim themselves, oh no, the laws were abolished. How can you pray for other people? So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.